This is the LIP Extra. Hey there, I'm Ryan from Positive Athlete, here for another episode of the LIP Extra. Today's subject is mental performance, and our host Scott Peterson caught up with Dr. Tiffany Jones, a mental performance consultant who has worked with hundreds of athletes and Olympians across the country. Dr. Tiff is a master of helping athletes of all ages with things like improving mental toughness, managing emotions, and decreasing negative thoughts. We know that student athletes can often struggle with the mental side of their sport, and Dr. Tiff has some great advice on taking your mental performance to the next level. So let's jump into episode 2 of the LIP Extra.
We're joined by Dr. Tiffany Jones, a mental performance consultant to organizations like the United States Olympic Committee and helping them. And Dr. Jones, first of all, welcome. I'm going to call you Dr. Tiff because that's what all of you, the players and the athletes call you. Welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you so much for having me. I love it. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about what you do, okay? Because we were really interested in this from the standpoint of a lot of coaches and a lot of parents and even a lot of kids who need to hear some of the things you have to say. So talk a little bit about your experience and what you do.
Sure. So I've been in the sports psychology world now for over 17 years. I work with professional athletes all the way down to the youth level. I am not a licensed psychologist, though I think psychology is great and psychologists are fantastic in counseling. I'm on the mental skills side of things. So I'm working with anything from performance-related issues with confidence, managing pressure, helping coaches create practices that simulate the psychological and physiological pressure that kids or athletes are going to feel when they're in game situations. And then on the other side of it, I'm working with teams on culture and communication and accountability. And then, of course, the hot topic is how to coach and parent today's generation of kids. So those are kind of the hot button topics that I work with and deal with on a daily basis.
One of the hot topics I know that you've expressed a lot about with young athletes and even some of the more experienced athletes is this idea of self-awareness and how critical it is to performance.
Sure. So I was just talking to a pro athlete this morning and we were discussing, I said, self-awareness is like the absolute foundational skill for mental toughness or mental skills training. And because of our devices and our phones and technology, a lot of times we just don't ever sit with our thoughts anymore. And so these younger athletes, they get out of practice or they get out of games and they jump right on their phones and they're never just at just sitting and being with their own thoughts. And so a lot of times they don't know who they are without their sport, or their identity is just in their sport. And we have to kind of parcel that out and help them do that. They struggle with their why, why are they even playing, to what is fun. Like you'll ask athletes, they'll tell you it's not fun anymore. And I'm like, okay, but what is fun? And they struggle telling you what is fun about sports. And so that is a huge thing. It's getting them to reflect and write. We have something that we have them do called a rut, which is raw unfiltered thoughts. So having them write a rut, which is just getting anything that's going on in their head down on a piece of paper, so we can understand their thoughts and their emotions. Because if we can understand that, then we can get to, the why behind maybe inconsistent performance or struggles they may be having. So the self-awareness piece is the absolute foundational skill. And there's lots of different cool things that we've come up with to really help athletes today to try to explore those internal thoughts and feelings.
I've heard you talk a little bit about having when kids are going into competition, having a game plan, and sometimes that is going in with this idea of, hey, nothing could go wrong. And that's a great positive thought. But what are the dangers of having that kind of a philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, we hear all the time, keep it positive. And, if you do anything with visualization or imagery, it should only be seeing yourself doing the things right. But it's sport. I tell perfectionists all the time, this is the wrong kind of job for you to get into if you're a perfectionist, because sports is all about mistakes. And if you're training and playing on the edge of your ability, which is the only way you're going to reach your excellence, you're going to make a whole slew of mistakes. And it's not about the mistakes, it's about your response to the mistakes. And so I wanted you to go through in your mind or think about the things that maybe could go wrong in a game, a tournament, a match. And then I want to know what your response to it is, because the athletes that respond the fastest to lack of execution, mistakes, bad call by a referee, whoever can respond the fastest to that is going to typically have the most consistent performance, which often will lead to consistent results, even though you don't ultimately have control over the results. And so it's getting young athletes, especially, or even my pro athletes, to understand that. And today's kids, because we're bringing them up in such a box of you have to be perfect, you can't color outside the lines. We have a bunch of perfectionists trying to play a sport or play sports that is anything but perfect. And so really I spend a lot of my time trying to teach athletes on how to take risks. What is failure? Failure is when you just flat out give up. Making mistakes and lack of execution is not failure. That's just part of learning. And it's really also guiding parents and coaches to use that language. Because we confuse kids when we tell them to make mistakes, but then when they make a mistake, parents and coaches are throwing their arms up on the sideline in disbelief and can't believe their kid made a mistake and what is wrong with them and all of that kind of stuff. So it's not just educating athletes and teaching them. We really have to do a better job as adults on the language that we use more around kids.
I've had some kids talk to me that I've met in the past about how nervous they get before a game or a match. Do you have any tips on how does somebody approach it when they get super nervous? They don't even know they're anxious about the game, or they're nervous for whatever reason. What do you tell athletes relative to that subject?
So there you go, Steve. That's what we do all the time. We guess. We try to guess why the nerves. And I'm like, you don't feel nervous unless you're thinking about things. You don't have a physiological response or a nervous feeling unless you're thinking or focused on something. So we have to get to what are you thinking? And if we can get to what you're thinking, we can then get to why are you thinking that in the first place? And so that's where those ruts really come in. Write your rut is I want all of that down because I'm going to parcel or pull out emotions. And then we start attaching the thoughts that are leading to those emotions. And then you can sit with the athlete and say, okay, so why are you thinking this? And this isn't just something that's going to be fixed on game day. This is something that we should do before every practice. It's things that kids can do before they take a test or an exam. It's something you can do if you go on a job interview. It's any time you have any negative emotion like fear, anxiety, aggression, being upset, any of those negatives. I'm like, all right, you're feeling tense because whatever. And so let's get it out on a piece of paper and write it. And so write your rut. And I think that what's happening is a lot of times we try to guess as adults. So it's like being in a dark room and we're throwing darts to try to help our athlete not be scared or anxious. And so we're throwing things and we're trying to find, but the thing is that we don't realize that the dartboard is on the ceiling. And so by having a kid write, or any athlete write down what they're thinking and feeling as adults, it's turning at least the light on so we realize that the dartboard's on the ceiling. So we at least have a shot of helping that athlete manage their anxiety or their nerves. And we have to get to why are they nervous? And a lot of it, of course, has to do with fear of failure or fear of disappointment. A lot of it is future, or it's going to be past. So a lot of times when you have that anxiety, you're either thinking in the future or in the past. So if we can figure out the why behind that, we can then help change mindset or get them to stay present focused. And that's the key, is to get them to be present.
How do you convince a young kid though? Because pride, of course, even as adults, is a major issue. And so pride in all of that, being willing to write something down and be vulnerable, it seemed to be that would be a great thing to learn early in life.
That's why I would love to spend more and more of my time with youth athletes, because by the time you get them when they're 18 to 22-year-olds in college, they already have bad habits, or they put up a wall or a shield. And so often I'll know if they've had good youth coaches or that the home life is good because kids have learned this vulnerability. And I say self-awareness is a foundational skill for mental toughness. The one that's right next to it is vulnerability. They kind of go hand in hand. And so you can't be mentally tough if you're not willing to be vulnerable so that you can become more self-aware. That's kind of the building blocks. And so when they trust a coaching staff, when a kid trusts their mom and dad or their guardians, when they trust whomever they're around, they're going to have no problem writing a rut. And so I find it interesting because younger kids have no issue writing. It's when they start to get older, they start to struggle because they want to know, how is this going to affect my playing time? What are people going to think about me? Is the coach going to cut me? And so it's creating a space or a culture where, you know what, you write whatever you want. It can be about the coach, it can be about anything, but we're just trying to help you reach your excellence, and we need you to do this. But right away, if a kid or an athlete doesn't want to show the coach, then there isn't a trust factor between that athlete and that coach. It's a huge red flag, or with a parent.
Dr. Tiff, everybody wants to win, right? You go into your sport, nobody gets involved with a sport, and I mean, they may get involved to be just socially involved, but most of the athletes who are serious about playing, they have that desire, the real desire to win. But I've heard you talk a little bit about the lack of commitment that it takes really if they want to win. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So I keep talking about the why. The why, you want to know the why, because without a why, like a good why you're playing your sport, you're not going to have any motivation. And motivation is that internal passion, that flame, that fire. And again, motivation is important because without it, you're not going to ever commit. But there's lots of athletes that go around and talk a big game. There's a lot of kids who go around and talk a big game. Like, yeah, I want to go to college. I want a college scholarship. Yeah, I want to be in the Olympics. Yeah, I want to be an All-American. Yeah, I want all these things. And I believe them. They talk a good game. But at the end of the day, what separates is the commitment level. And the commitment is the behavior. It's not what I hear. It's what I see. And so most of my pro athletes, I don't have to ask what their goals are or what their why is. Because if I follow them around for a week, I'm going to know based on their behavior and the choices that they make. And the thing with commitment is you're either in or you're out. It's not a buffet. You don't get to pick and choose what you want to do and what you don't want to do and then say you're committed. And so it's hard. It's uncomfortable. There's a lot of delayed gratification. And I can't promise you're ever going to get the results you want. But I know if you don't commit, you're not even giving yourself a shot to reach that goal or reach your excellence. And so it's holding the mirror up. And this is what really athletes don't really like is I'm the master at holding that mirror up and saying, you say you want this, but you are not behaving in this way. And so it doesn't match what you say you want. So we either have to change your goal or you have to change your behavior, your choice. But in my field, I'm doing a disservice if I let an athlete, a team, coaches walk around and say one thing when I know that their behavior is never going to get them there. So I'm the one that has to hold that big mirror up and say, nope, we got to change the goal, or you're going to have to change your commitment level and your behavior, or this is never going to work.
If you're a young athlete, who are some of the professional athletes or even some of the amateurs that are Olympians that you think that they should be watching and emulating in your experience? Some of the people maybe people you've worked with, or maybe just people you've observed.
Oh, that's such a great question. Well, Megan Klingenberg, for sure. I've worked with Megan since she was 20 in the 2008 under 20 women's national team. And right away, she was special. Like she yaps a little bit, she trash talks a little bit, but her behavior backs it up. And she's a good person. And she understands that there's more beyond just sports, which I value a lot in athletes, is when athletes understand that they are gifted and they work really hard, and sometimes there's luck involved in them reaching the aspirations that they've reached or the levels that they've reached, but they are humble and they are vulnerable and they're self-aware and they understand that there's more to life than just their sport. So I would say Megan Klingenberg, Brianna Decker, who plays for our U.S. women's national team for ice hockey. I think Caleb Dressel down at University of Florida, swimming. He is a quiet, humble guy who just puts his head down and works, but understands there's more to things than just, swimming and swimming in the Olympics. And so I right off the top of my head, those are three recents. I work with some CrossFitters, Katrin David's daughter for sure, who has won the games twice, is the most kind, thoughtful human on the planet. But you want to see people who work. You want to see people who really work. Go watch a CrossFitter. Go watch a CrossFit athlete train. I'm telling you right now, like there's no other athlete on the planet that trains like a CrossFit athlete who's trying to make the games. But those are some athletes right off the top of my head, for sure. My
last question I wanted to ask you was about athletes overthinking things. Mm-hmm. And I heard you at a conference talking about this pink elephant analogy, is that how people get caught up into overthinking things. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I haven't used that in a while, but the pink elephant is, if there's a big pink elephant in the room and I tell you not to think about the pink elephant for 10 seconds and So how do you not think about the pink elephant? And typically when I say that, Scott, I'll be like, whatever you do, Scott, don't think about the pink elephant. It's over there. It's big, pink. It's an elephant. Can't miss it. It's massive. It's over in the corner of the room, and stop. And then you ask how many people were thinking about the pink elephant. And if you're being honest, most people thought at least for a second about the pink elephant. So how do you not think about something? You think about something else. And that is something you develop as a mental skill. Is it's being aware there's a pink elephant. My thought maybe just went to the pink elephant. And it's not if your thought goes to the pink elephant, it's how quickly do you think about something else, or focus on something else, or give power to something else. That's how you recover the fastest, is when you can like recognize, admit, accept I'm where I shouldn't be, and now I'm going to fight, and I have the tools to fight, to focus on something else and not give my power over here. So it's not the fact you're not bad if you thought about the pink elephant. It's just how quickly do you recognize and admit I did, and now how do I fight to think about something else, or distract myself, or focus on something else. And then the overthinking, of course, is don't be a flat squirrel, right? Right or wrong, make a decision. The world is paved with flat squirrels who couldn't make a decision. And so I'm always telling, especially the perfectionist, like overthinking, overanalyzer computer brains, I'm always like, hey, like be an alive squirrel, right or wrong, just pick a side. And at least you go to the left and you should have gone right. Well, now you can cross the street and get back over to the right. But you getting in the middle of the road and just going like this, and now you're smushed because of indecision. Well, what good is that going to do? And so the pink elephant and the flat squirrel, I guess we're on an animal kind of theme here, are two great examples of the power of your thinking, and learning how to train that and where to give your power to.
Yeah, a good analogy would be a golfer. For example, I know you work with some golf teams, and the golfer who's thinking about that bad shot that they just hit and can't get past that one to go on to the next shot.
Right. Absolutely. And so it's coming up with tools. Again, then you're focused on the past, and that creates tension and pressure and stress. And then you carry over. And I always laugh because I'm like, it's not the club. It's not the course. It's not the ball. It's your brain. You're like, your body doesn't know that you just hit a bad shot. Your body doesn't know if you are 3 over. That's your brain. You're focused on either the past, or you're thinking about the future, which creates tension, which changes your swing plane and changes the way you swing. Or if you're in another sport, it changes your actual body and your biomechanics. And it also changes how we make decisions and how we adapt to things around us. And so that's the thinking, and why the feeling matters so much in sport, and why emotion matters in sport, because what you feel changes your biomechanics or your body, which changes your ability to perform skills that you've trained your whole life. And then it also changes the way that we adapt to things around us, our decision making, our flexibility of thought, our speed of thought. All of that is hindered. And that is why you might not be touchy-feely, you might not want to be vulnerable, but if you want to win and you want to reach your excellence and be a consistent team or performer, then you better care about your emotions.
Well, thanks again for spending time with us, Dr. Tiff. Good luck with all you have going on, and keep us all positive, and keep us and all these athletes that you're working with, because this is a difficult time, and we appreciate who you are and what you do.
Thank you. And thanks, Steve, for everything that you're doing and what you're doing for high school kids around the country. It's just fantastic. The resources and opportunities you're providing kids, all sports, all over the country. It's awesome.